Hey everybody, welcome to the second video. I'm going to call it episode 2. I figure I just name them episodes. So the first episode was yesterday, and then episode 2, 3, and just keep doing it like that. I'll give it a subtitle, just something to frame a reference so people can look, but I'm going to number them that way. Today's episode I'm going to start with, I think it's a good place to start, is 1983, and specifically Return of the Jedi. It is the 40th anniversary, so I figured it's a good place to start. I pulled out a bunch of my Jedi stuff, and I'll kind of show you, what Jedi's meant to me over the years. The big thing with Return of the Jedi, now I know everybody thinks that Jedi is the weakest of the 3 original trilogy movies, and from a film perspective, I agree. Obviously the best made one is Empire. That's probably, the true fans, it's probably the most desired. It's got the best acting, it's got the best pacing, it's got the Hoth scene, which is unforgettable, the Bespin scenes, all that stuff. It introduced Lando. It left on a low note. So everybody loves that movie. I love it. I love them, all 3 of them. I was there for Ground Zero with original Star Wars. I was young. I was 4 years old at the time, 77. But in 78 I was in kindergarten, and I started to I got the action figures just like everybody else did in 78. We had to wait for them. I didn't have that early bird box set thing. I think I remember a kid, and it might have been even preschool, before kindergarten, he had the little set, and he brought it in. He was showing it off, as kids do. But kindergarten was when most kids got them. Well, in 78, I was in kindergarten. 78 was when most kids got them, and I still remember my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Elliott, not yelling at me, or not even yelling, but not scolding me, but scolding another kid in class. Colin, it's not your day to bring in Star Wars figures. You have to bring them in on your day. I just remember that. I didn't bring my figures to school that much when I was in school. I don't know, but Star Wars is pretty big for me. I'll probably get into Star Wars later, and it's more the 70s. And like I said, I was young, kindergarten, when I started getting the figures. Empire, for me, is kind of a sour note myself. Speaking of ending on a downer, that's when my parents started to go through a divorce, and everything got really chaotic, and I kind of blocked out a lot of that stuff, and and there's, I saw it in movie theater opening day with my parents. We had to sit apart from each other, but they were fighting anyway, so that was fine. My sister and my mom sat way over here. My dad and me sat way over here because we couldn't find 4 seats together. I had a few of the figures. I remember I did have Yoda. I did send away for the Boba Fett. All that type of stuff. I remember I really liked the Snow Trooper, but I'm not going to talk about Empire either, because today I want to talk about Jedi in 1983 specifically. I was 10, so that's 40 years ago, so I just aged myself. I'm 50. But that to me is my Star Wars. Even though I was in kindergarten with the other one, and Empire is kind of a gray area. But for me, my Star Wars was Return of the Jedi. That's when I really got into it, more so than any other. And it all started with, obviously, learning about the movie. My sister had a Time magazine. She was in 83. She was a senior in high school. And she had a Time magazine that she brought home. And it had inside of it, it pretty much gave out the entire plot of Star Wars, or Return of the Jedi. I didn't read it, but my sister read it. And she said, it gives away everything. It tells you everything. And I remember bringing the magazine to 4th grade back to school with me, and there was a couple older kids who were in 5th grade at the time. One of them a really good friend and very huge Star Wars fan, and probably my cohort in crime when it came to Return of the Jedi, especially that year. But anyways, he was he was talking with another older kid, and he was like, oh, yeah, they're out on recess, and he says, oh, yeah, they're going to have, I read the Time Magazine article, and it talked about it, and hey, I got the Time Magazine article. And he was talking about, Jabba the Hutt's going to be in it. It's like he was supposed to be in the cantina scene. I don't know how he knew that at, 11 years old in 1983, but somehow he knew that. And I was like, cantina? And I'm thinking as a kid, because I've got kid brain, a canteen, that you drink water out. I'm like, he's a slug and he lives in a cantina. I'm like, what? I'm thinking like a slug, and I'm thinking of a cantina. So my brain's all, jumping at craziness at this point. But it intrigued me, of course, and I really wanted to see it. And I think before the movie did come out, I mentioned this in the last video, it was 1983. They opened up a Toys R Us at the Lakeside Mall in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And I was there for the grand opening, but this isn't when I got this. I think the grand opening was a few weeks before it. It might have been the same day, but I don't think so. I just remember they had a lot of people there, and they had people dressed in, only one guy dressed in a Star Wars costume, Darth Vader, and he was going to walk from the back stock room to the other back stock room and shake hands. And that was before all this cosplay stuff and everything. And so seeing somebody in a Star Wars costume was just like, whoa, that was mind-boggling. But I'm pretty sure, I think we came back when it wasn't so busy. It was packed that day. And I got my first 3 Jedi figures. All of my stuff is gone. I don't have in that Darth Vader case you see back there. I'll get to that later, but that's not my original. Everything was either lost, thrown away, or whatever. But I don't have anything from the past. So anyways, the first 3 figures I got was Squid Head, Emperor's Royal Guard. That one blew me away when I saw that one. And Bib Fortuna. And I think the biggest reason I got those 3 specifically is they were the figures of that first wave of Jedi figure that had the most soft goods. And for me, that blew my mind too. Soft goods on a action figure, that's unheard of. So I got those 3 figures and really liked that Emperor's Royal Guard. So those were my first 3, and then I started getting more and more, of course, as the summer went on. That, to me, I still look back on that summer, not just because of Return of the Jedi, but I still think that was my favorite summer of my childhood, was the summer of '83. A lot of stuff happened. I broke my left wrist that summer riding my bike, all kinds of other things. But anyways, yeah, so those are my first 3 figures, and if I'm looking down, I have notes here because I can't remember everything that I wanted to talk about. There's a lot. Return of the Jedi is a big one for me, so that's why I'm kind of wanting to get that one out of the way. And this might even go 2 episodes. I want to keep this to under 30 minutes. I'm already at 8, and I'm just scratched the surface on my notes here. But eventually the movie came out in May, which I did go see with my dad and my sister. Opening day, saw it at the Hampton Movie Theater in Rochester Hills. And it was sold out. I remember it was sold out. The first matinee was sold out. We pulled up in the car, and somebody in the line went all the way down to the drugstore, and they were like, oh yeah, they're all sold out. And I said, why is everybody waiting in line for the next set, for the next showing? I'm like, Jesus. Eventually, I think we ended up driving around, and my dad's like, let's just go get in line, because otherwise we're not going to see this movie. So we ended up getting in line, waiting for over an hour, easily, if not 2 hours. I don't know I know they showed it I think they showed it in 2 theaters. They only had 4 theaters there, and they showed it on every hour. So whatever showing we saw, I know when we got out, I know it was blasting bright light when I got out of there, so it was still daytime. Yeah, I was blown away. I mean, the whole thing, I had a bunch of the figures by that time, and all I kept saying to my sister was, I've got him! I've got him! I've got him! The Jabba the Hutt scene was probably my all-time favorite, the whole Jabba sequence. that one really spoke to me. I mean, I like the fantasy aspect of it. It seemed very, even though it was science fiction, it seemed very fantasy because you had a lot of these monsters or aliens. And my son has coined the phrase ever since playing Fortnite. There's a character called Man Cakes. But my son really focuses on characters. He's 11. He really focuses on characters with that are crazy. They have some kind of crazy head. And so we coined the phrase pancake head. So every time I see something, I go, oh, hey, there's a bunch of pancake heads in this. You might want to check it out. So to me, I think I was the same way as a kid. I like the pancake heads. And the Jabba the Hutt scene, just like the cantina scene in the original Star Wars, filled with pancake heads. So, that's what really spoke to me. The skiff thing blew me away. I wasn't really a Jabba fan per se, but I mean, it was more the menagerie of people, of all these different aliens, of Boba Fett being in the scene. And I'm not going to go off on Boba Fett. I'm sure people have made up have their Boba Fett memories, but he was in it, of course, and that whole sequence is awesome. I would say probably the Jabba the Hutt scene, first favorite in the movie, followed by the Endor scene, specifically the speeder bike chase, and of course the battle, the Endor battle. The Ewoks, I didn't dislike them. Like, I know a lot of people hated the Ewoks. It's like, I didn't dislike them. I didn't love them either. I wasn't like, oh, nice, cute little bears. I was just like, they're there, and they're part of it, and I just, whatever. I love the Ewok village. I'll get to that. I thought that was cool. But for me, it was the speeder bike, the biker scouts. I love the biker scouts. The black and the white against the contrast against the green of the forest. The bikes themselves. It was the 80s. We're all about our BMX bikes back then. So, you essentially had your speeder bike out in the garage that you could go ride. I'll get to that too. That plays into this. But Jedi was my movie. And especially that summer. Hit just right at the right time. Perfect timing. Again, with the action figures, I ended up getting them, and but there's a lot of other products I want to mention too, and not a lot of people talk about this very much in a lot of the toy reviews. Like I said, this isn't specifically a toy review. It's more of a recollection, and I think going forward, the aim of my channel is I'm going to tell stories, because I tell stories. I do it for a living. I tell stories, and I'm going to tell stories, and they're based on my childhood. My son loves when he listens to my stories. He always tells me a story when you were a kid. And I have to instantly recall a story and blather it out to him. Usually it's to put him to bed, but so he falls asleep. So if you guys fall asleep, it's okay. Maybe this will be an ASMR channel, where I just put people to sleep by telling you my endless blatherings about my childhood. But anyways, so there's other products that I like. I want to mention those. Probably the first thing. Remember, this is back before we didn't even have a VCR then. I know they were out, but they were for rich people, so we didn't even have a VCR then. You couldn't see. I saw Return of the Jedi 3 times in the theater in '83, and I think I saw it for an encore in '84 when it came back. I believe that happened. You couldn't see it at home. I still joke about the only time you ever could see anything Star Wars at home, even pre-Jedi, was that little bit in the Sunday night. I think it was the Disney movie. I don't know if it was the Disney movie, but it was like a Sunday night movie. The Sunday night ABC movie, and then they'd show like a bunch of sequences, a bunch of little movies together, and they'd play this music, dun 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 dun, and I remember I would count how many times Julie Andrews would turn in Sound of Music. Dun, 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 dun. 3 times she'd turn. As soon as she got to about the 3rd turn, boom! Trench scene, Star Wars, Darth Vader's TIE shooting at Luke's TIE fighter, the other 2 TIE fighters with it, that crazy scene for just literally 3 seconds, 2 seconds. And that was it. And so if you wanted to see anything of Star Wars that was moving at the time, you had to watch the Sunday night movie watch just the opening for 2-3 seconds of Star Wars, and that's all you got. So you had to somehow consume the movie after it was gone somehow, and I'll get to the obvious ones. But one thing, now these are not real. I made these. These are printouts. I did double side them, but they're printouts. I didn't do them all yet because I'm just, they take a lot of ink. But these are printouts of the original Topps trading cards, and I'm just kind of putting them together just to kind of as a mock-up or a facsimile of what I had, because I don't want to spend $300 on or $200 on a set on eBay. This is good enough for me. It fulfills that empty hole in my heart. So, it was the trading cards and the scenes. I mean, I get glare on the window. I'm going to work on my lighting here, but you had the scenes and iconic scenes that are forever burned in your brain. And and they're all in order for the movie. Obviously, starting with the Jabba scene, they give you the cast, and then they do. I think they have I think the first actual card is the opening scene where the Imperial shuttle comes down and then goes to. They don't dwell on it for very long, but then the inspection. When Darth Vader comes and inspects with Moff Jared in the beginning of the movie, and then it just goes right into the scene with the two droids, 3CPO as I call them. I've always called them 3CPO. It's drove all my friends crazy. You mean C3PO? I know, but for some reason as a kid I could never stop saying 3CPO. So I'm still going to call them today 3CPO. And somebody's messaging me. Anyways, it plays in the order. So in order to watch the movie, essentially, you'd have to flip through the cards, read them, read little things in the back if you can't remember what happened specifically in that scene. But they're almost like a comic book, which also brings me to this guy. I know it came out as a 4-issue limited series for Star Wars, and somehow I missed that because I was collecting the Star Wars comic at the time, but for some reason that I didn't learn about that till like maybe a year later. I found it like in the quarter bin or something, or after the fact. I'm like, what are these Return of the Jedi comics? And it was just a reprinting of this, but this is what I got originally. I got this from everybody knows Rite Aid now. Before Rite Aid, it was Perry Drugstore for a long time. Well, our Perry, right around the block from the house, was actually called Cunningham's. It was called Apex for a very short period of time, but it's also called Cunningham's, and I believe it was a mom and pop place, pharmacy, drugstore, and that had a magazine rack. And that's where I got a lot of the trading cards too. They're $1 a pack, and so I got a lot of the trading cards. And then I saw it walk by the magazine one day back. What is this? Flipped it open. I didn't know who this was at the time, but I've learned since then. But just unbelievably awesome Al Williamson art. Just amazing stuff. I mean, he's a master. It was a master, but and of course I instantly flipped to the Sarlacc scene, and I saw Boba Fett, come out there, and I flipped. I was like, oh, it's Boba Fett. So I had to have this, and that was $2.50 at the time. And normally going to the drugstore just meant a couple of packs of cards for 50 cents, but that day I think I had to do some begging, and then I got that. This is not the one I had as a kid. Even if it was, mine wouldn't be in this good a condition. I got this really cheap and almost mint condition. It's a very good condition. Somewhere. I can't remember. Either online or at a comic shop. Maybe at a convention. No, I think it was a comic shop. Also, while I'm at it, that same year, or that same time, same store, I walked by again one day, and boom, this pops up, and I was like, what's this? And this is, it was the official movie magazine. Again, anything you could get a picture, anything you could get somebody talking about it, anytime you could have any kind of peripheral information, in any media source for the movie, it was just unheard of. And, seeing the production scenes and stuff, little teeny production scenes, I know it's hard to see, but You know, that just boggled my mind as a kid. It just literally boggled my mind. Couldn't believe it. One of the big things about this book that I remember specifically focusing in at was the cast, and I wanted to know who played Boba Fett at the time. I didn't know, you know, and I was like, Boba Fett, where is he? Where is he? Oh, Ewoks, Boba Fett, Jeremy Bullock? I didn't know how to pronounce his name then. You know, I was like, who's this guy? That guy's the guy who played Boba Fett? Oh, he's a real person. That's crazy. But yeah, so, and again, not my original. I had to get this later on. And of course, this is also not an original, but this was another way to consume the movie. And I believe the one I got originally, I think I got on Scholastic Books through the book drive or the book sale thing at my at the media center at my elementary school. I think, you know, you go in and you see all these books laid on the table and you pick one, and then of course you'd always want it, like, I want to take it home. Here's my money. I'm going to take this home. And like, no, that's not how it works. You got to order it. What do you mean order it? You got to wait. So then you had to wait, and it didn't come in for like 2-3 weeks, maybe even a month later. And then finally they get that Scholastic box, and oh, I'm getting my book. And I got a lot of storybooks that way. I have a bunch of them. I went back and got a bunch of them that I had to have. A lot of movies, a lot of ones that I had. But again, only way to consume it. Now, one thing I don't have, I think I have an MP3 of it that I've downloaded somewhere on the internet, and it's the cassette tape. Now, I didn't have the little one, and I didn't have the book and record, but I had the cassette, and it had the bigger 12-inch, because it looked like an album at first, but it was actually a cassette tape with an album-sized book, and I think it was this image specifically on the cover of that. And you know, it was narrated. It had sounds from the movie. I remember it totally it was only like 45 minutes long, so there was a bunch of scenes that it didn't have in the movie. And it's funny because when you go back and you finally got it on cable, you know, a few years later, and we're able to tape it onto a, you know, blank tape and watch it a million times, literally, you could see, you were like, oh, wait a minute, that scene, I totally forgot about that scene, or, you know, or you just couldn't recall it, even though it was still somewhat fresh in your mind. I was just I listened to that cassette tape so many times. I didn't even care about the book. The book, whatever. I mean, it had cool pictures in it, nice color pictures, but I wasn't carrying around the book all the time. I just wanted the tape, and I would just I literally go to bed every night listening to that tape, the guy telling me the story, and you know, and he'd narrate it and stuff, and you know, I got to the point where I could literally just remember and recall. I can't do it now, but I could recall every narration line and just repeat it to myself. Then I stopped using the tape. I would just literally talk to myself to sleep, you know, regurgitating all the lines from that. And I'd try to do the voices and try to do the sound effects and stuff. But I don't have, like I said, I don't have the real copy of it. I don't even have a fake copy outside of the MP3, which I'm not going to play, but it's on a hard drive anyway somewhere. Last of my books that I have of that, of course, is this. Now, I found this at Rochester Book Center, where I normally bought my comics, which was right next door to Kittyland, which was my go-to toy store outside of Kmart and Toys R Us. But I remember walking by one day because my dad didn't really yell at me, but he's like, Tim, you got enough Star Wars figures. I had all the Jedi figures at this time. I didn't have every Empire figure, but I walked down to Kittyland, because Chatham grocery store was where my dad grocery shop. So every Sunday afternoon or morning, after cartoons, he would go grocery shopping, and I would just, while he was grocery shopping, I'd walk down to those two stores, and I'd pick out a few action figures, and after he got done putting groceries in the way, he'd have to give me some money, and I'd go in and I'd pay the people. I was on a first-name basis with Kittyland. Those people knew me by name. I knew them by name. They knew when I came in every single time. They would hold stuff out for me. I'll get to that later. But I'd go into the bookstore, too, to look at comic books and other things, and I walked by this. It was like sitting on a little display, or not like a display, but a little stand on a stack of them. There's a stack of them in a little stand, and I'm like, what's that? Sketchbook? What do you mean sketchbook? And sure enough, that's what it was. It it was all of the production sketches, most of it Ralph McQuarrie, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it literally just blew my mind. I was like, what is this? You know, when you're 10 and you see this type of stuff, and I was already drawing heavily at the time, and just these different versions of the characters and the monsters, the whole Ewok thing, the stilt leg Ewok guys, they blew me away. I was like, what? The little rat ones, or mice or whatever they were, and of course the speeder bikes, all the different versions of what would have been the speeders. I know they've used some of these designs in some of the newer stuff. This guy specifically, I drew this drawing at least 50 times. Just redrew the drawing. It's shadow and all. And then I remember I had a version, one of the best drawings of versions of it I had. My grandma ended up putting it on, just setting the drawing. It was only about maybe 6 by 9 inches. She set it on the table as you walked out to the front door, and it just sat there forever. I don't know why. She must have thought, oh, I'll put one of my grandson's drawings up there. It was really weird, but I remember staring at it a lot of time. I don't know where it went. I also drew this guy. I really liked that guy. I thought he was cool looking. But yeah, the whole section on the speeder bike blew me away. And of course, you know, I was so enamored with the Biker Scout. And when I saw the Biker Scout, that drawing was, I mean, I don't know how many times I've redrawn that drawing. You know, notebooks in school, you name it. You know, the ships, the different version of the Imperial fighter, all of it. Emperor's throne room. You know, different rebel ships. This book just, I mean, spoke to me. And it was like, you know, be an artist. That's what I kept saying. Be an artist. Draw all the time. And like, there's about, I would say there's probably 5 key books of my childhood that formed my drawing, which is what I do today for a living. And I'll get into that later too. But this is one of the books. This one, and of course, I'll get to I'll pull the 5 books up, make an episode sometime on that. But from there, that's pretty much everything. What am I at? 27 minutes. I think let's call it there. Let's do this part 1. We'll call it Return of the Jedi Part 1. And then I'll get into some of the other things. Just as a note, like I said, that is not my original Darth Vader trading case. My original one, if I had it, would have my address written on the back on silver paint pen, because silver paint pens were new at that 1983, maybe 84 is when 83, 84 is when I did this. Down here I had a Def Leppard bumper sticker, and I think I had a WRF, baby! WRF was a rock radio station in Detroit. I think I had that bumper sticker there. Like I said, my address written. I bought this at that same antique store that I bought my Battle Ram. I think I paid $15 for this. It didn't have any of the stickers in it, but it did have the little stays, you know, that keep the brackets that keep the people in there. And I was going to print out stickers and make repro stickers, but I didn't know who I was going to put in here. I still probably will, but all of my Star Wars retro figures, which I'll probably get to in the next episode, the Jedi ones are the bottom 6. If I have all of those, including the only Empire one I have is Boba Fett. I got part of the Bounty Hunter sets, but if I got them all, I think this thing fits 30 figures or 29 figures. I was going to take them all out package, which I'm going to eventually take them out of those packages, but I was going to put them in this just so I have. This is all I wanted. Since then, this is all I've ever wanted. I want my Darth Vader case back, and I want it filled with all my original Kenner Star Wars figures. That's all I wanted. That's all I've ever wanted. And I'll get into that when I start talking about toys more here, but let me end this video, and then tomorrow I'll record the part 2 and kind of pick up where I went along, because I'm about halfway through my list of notes here. Lots of cool stuff. Christmas catalogs, you name it. And I'll get into the toys more specifically. But for now, it's 30 minutes, so let's cut it off here. This will be episode 2, and I will pick up tomorrow. Talk to you then. Take care, everybody.